Okay, here we go. Due to requests, I'll just finish this whole thing. So I'm gonna do just two more parts without making it unreasonably long in the channel.
In that case, everybody's not equal when
Mhm.
come down to resources. For sure, I agree with you.
Here's the thing I want to just impart is that I think that we have a very distorted version of what resiliency and what restorative practice is, because we live in a time where we're seeing so many things happen so fast. So like we've seen technology like advance so fast, right?
That
Like
is
we
true.
have seen just our lives shift so fast that I think that we forget that as humans, our ability to recalibrate, to heal from trauma is simply not the same as the things that we are watching in technology. And so we cannot just casually think that people just get over things. Katrina, people in New Orleans are still reeling from
Yeah,
Katrina.
they are. That's true. That's
Yeah,
true.
You know what I
That
mean?
is true.
That
So
part
when
is
we
true.
talk
That is true.
about the amount of crime and violence that is still living and happening explicitly in Katrina, we have to also talk about the amount of trauma, the amount of drug use, the amount of policing, the amount of all of these things that physically harm people across the world, not just in the United States, across the world in communities that are not being served, and how those communities never get the chance to quote unquote pull themselves up by the bootstraps.
Yeah, I agree. I personally agree. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I
Well,
agree. Yeah,
that
for
was
sure.
fun.
Yeah.
That was-
Of course, yeah.
Thanks, Josh.
No problem.
Yeah. And I'll say this part, she actually did make a lot of reasonable and justified arguments. Whereas some of the other parts, she gets a little radical. This one, I like that he sat down and listened to her, because she was actually cooking with that statement. I'll give her this part.
Hey, before we go any further,
Oh,
we
God.
want to take a moment to say thanks so much to Straight Arrow News for powering the fact checks in this video. Straight Arrow News is on a mission to raise the bar on journalism in a time of media bias and mistrust.
Yep.
Straight Arrow News helps you quickly find trusted information you need to understand
The fact that media has become so biased to the point people need things like that, as well as ground news, is one of the saddest things ever, where having no bias and having a lot of information put into things is not the normal anymore. It's more, here's an agenda, and we're going to take all the facts and make it align with the agenda we want to feed you. And that's one of the saddest things now, where having unbiased news is a luxury. It's not the minimum standard.
the news, allowing you to dive deep into the topics that matter to you and the world around you. Their work is trying to break the bias bubble, helping you understand how every side of the political spectrum is reporting on a story, so you get a full picture of the news. That's why we're so happy to be partnering with Straight Arrow News. They deliver the facts, unbiased, balanced, and designed to make sense of a complex world, getting you the clarity you deserve and news you can trust. Go to san.com/surrounded or click the link in the description to check it out. By clicking that link, you're not just supporting this channel. You also take advantage of a better way to get the news. Welcome back to Trustworthy Journalism. Thanks again to Straight Arrow News for partnering with us on this episode. Now, let's get into it.
My next claim is systemic racism isn't a theory. It's our lived reality backed by data and history.
There's already one problem with her statement, which is she doesn't believe in data. So how is data supposed to help you if you don't even believe in it in the first place? But anyways, let's see. Oh, God. Oh.
Hello?
Whoever
Hello,
that guy
John.
is.
John Samuel.
Hello, John Samuel. First name, first name. All right.
Blame my parents.
Hi, parents.
I want to listen to you first. Why do you feel that? Why do you feel that way? Why do you feel
John went to debate training before he came here. Okay.
Let's see.
Ultimately, I feel that way because it's simply just facts. It's in the books, and that's why there have been laws to challenge it. There have been innumerable instances where actual systems were created specifically for the impediment of Black people to advance. We have also seen innumerable instances where there were things created for Black people to advance, and they were taken back under the auspices of, we don't want them to advance. Ultimately, systemic racism exists in our institutions on a government level, in our institutions, whether it's prisons or schools, and it is undeniable because they are actively trying to reinstate it right now.
Can you give me an example of one of those systems that you believe
see.
perpetuates that cycle of racism?
Redlining.
Redlining? Okay.
Yes.
And how does that
Yeah. So long story short, redlining was when they would pick out certain places or neighborhoods to basically say, we're not going to loan to these people because they're high risk. Yeah, it's one of those things that were bad. Thankfully, laws were made against it. And let's see what they say.
Can you elaborate? Like, how is that affecting the Black community?
Do you know what redlining is?
I know a little bit. I'm not an expert.
Redlining was a system that was created to determine property values, and that said Black people can only live in certain neighborhoods and not in other neighborhoods. And the redlining lowered the property values of those Black neighborhoods by stating that they were more savage, that they were more dangerous, etc. Thus, they were not able to own property that was on
Her way of saying it is technically not wrong.
A level of par to their white counterparts. There were also many efforts at just simply not allowing Black people to get loans for property, putting them in predatory scenarios where they were being essentially unable to own land. And that inability to own land, but still having to pay out a mortgage, if you will, or a rent, continued to put Black people in a conundrum of not being able to excel at the same economic rate as their white counterparts.
That part of what she said technically isn't wrong either.
What I'm hearing from you, if I'm hearing correctly, is it feels like in the United States that for a while we've kind of established these systems at their foundation, and they've continued on, and they've continually just oppressed Black people, and we haven't dismantled them, and we haven't done much so they continue to complete the cycle. Is that what I'm hearing correctly?
Well, in many of these systems, they have been dismantled maybe in name, but because this country has never dismantled the culture of racism, they end up still living in practice. So we see that, for instance,
have actually helped stop racism too. Like the internet as well as video games are a really, really big one, where you could talk to people of pretty much any country, any race, and most people found that they're actually pretty cool with each other. It also does occasionally lead to like this very weird semi-racist friend group where you would have a German guy, a Black guy, a Hispanic guy, a white guy. And the way it would work is, all of them would throw out jokes at each other, like basically racist jokes at each other, but they're all friends. It was kind of like together simultaneously. They're allowed to make fun of each other, but if you're not one of their friends, you're not allowed to do the same. It has created one of those groups before, which is a very cursed way of stopping racism.
The way that the appraisal system works. Now we saw there was an entire documentary on how appraisals have been also very racist, home appraisals, right? So your ability to sell your house.
Oh man, they're already raising their bro. He's just listening right now. And they're already okay. Whatever.
For the value that it deserves.
Right.
There were a number of homes, particularly in Marin County, California, where Black people had one appraisal when they had their Blackness up. So they had their dashikis hanging, and they had they had their Black Good Times poster. But then when they removed all of those items and put up white people and a dog in the house, and then had their white friends come and pose as the owners of the home, the appraisal was significantly higher. And we have seen that in a number of instances. Now, of course, that is just Marin County, but there are a number of other scenarios where this has been relayed. And that's why there were certain efforts by the Democratic Party to state, okay, well, we're going to try and step in for this.
I actually remember that case, and I watched it with the family, and I thought that was just really just terrible. But the problem I guess I have with systemic racism is, I guess for somebody like me, where my family comes from, the Deep South, you probably don't even know it, Aliceville, Alabama.
Damn.
That's where my grandparents are from. And my grandpa came, if you saw the house that he grew up in, I'm not trying to be funny, it looked like a slave house. It was just, they grew up in poverty. And the fact that he was able to go from that and get the highest rank enlisted in the United States Navy amidst, all these, systems, so to speak, and he was able to buy.
Damn, his granddad accomplished a lot. Yeah, that's pretty good for him. That means his granddad probably set the rest of his family up into a far better position in life just because of him getting to that position.
His own house out in San Diego.
Damn.
He was able to, pass on these things to his son, my dad, and his grandchildren. Now I'm able to get an education. I was able to get my undergrad, my master's.
Generational wealth.
That, the great-great-grandson of enslaved peoples can now say that, educated and can even run for Congress. I don't see how these systems are still in place as they were before. Because before, I would say you do have a little bit of a foothold. You do have some validity there. But I just think these days, when we call it systemic racism, really what we're calling it is those people who may still be in those institutions, those individual people who may actually be racist and hold some racist ideals, who are continuing to perpetuate this. I believe it's those people. So in all reality, the problem is not the systemic racism. The problem is us. The problem starts with those people who are perpetuating these, racist ideals. And so I feel like just to attack these systems is just, it's nonsensical.
Who's running the systems?
Like which system? You're talking about
whether
Congress,
it's the
government?
whether it's the prison industrial complex. We're seeing this now with
it's not gonna be that random white dude you see at a restaurant or that random black dude. It's gonna be like the people who make the rules for society, and they're the ones you can say are the ones running all that stuff.
Right.
With immigration and ICE, we're seeing this also with the effort at not making schools available for equal level of schooling available with the voucher systems that are now allowing tax dollars to allow people to go to segregated schools.
Right.
First of all, the schools are not segregated. It was a voucher system made so people, instead of being forced to go to the district school that they live in, they can instead choose another school if they would like to. Because choosing a better school over a school with worse data that's more dangerous is actually a good way to lift up people from poverty. It's about helping certain people that if they can meet the standards and get a better form of education in a less toxic environment, it's going to help raise them up, and it's going to bring them up into a better position than their family was beforehand.
Who is controlling those systems? So, for instance, in Tennessee, right?
Yeah.
So in Tennessee, you have a Senate and
oh my God, why is everyone raising up their flags? So far, it's not bad.
House of Representatives that is largely controlled by white Republicans and that have actively said, we are not going to consider what the people want in our constituencies. We are going to simply just do what we want to do, to the point where they have removed.
So it's only in those states that have largely white legislators or largely white people are controlling these systems. I'm not trying to.
All right, guys,
it's
I'm
over.
so sorry. You have been voted out.
Oh, it's sad. It's sad because they looked like they were going to have some type of talk that led to somewhere productive, but sadly everyone voted him out. Yeah, this was a sad move.
Please return to your seat.
So this was sadly another bad decision by the majority, and it sucks. Who's next? Oh, damn.
So to go back to your claim, you basically said something about Tennessee and how they've said what exactly. You said they are not in favor of what their people said, or?
Yeah, Tennessee has actively said, we're not really listening to our constituency. We're not even going to allow them in the gallery when we're voting on certain issues. So for instance, when it comes to guns in the classroom, the constituency very largely said, we do not want guns in the classroom. And they were like, well, we don't care. We're going to do it anyway.
The problem that she's not thinking of is the fact that Tennessee is a red state. That is the one thing she's missing out from her point. Tennessee is a red state. So that sounds like something that a red state would pass. And to be honest, it's not a bad legislation. If the person is responsible with a gun and capable of keeping all his students safe in case of an emergency, they should be able to have a gun.
We've also seen them actively silence members of the House of Representatives who are Black and not silence someone who is doing the exact same action who is a white woman, Gloria. Shout out to the Justins.
You are right, actually, on this aspect. I did actually remember a time where 2 Black Democrats, I believe, were actually not allowed to speak, and that was interesting. And I found that really insane, considering they're representatives of the state.
Yeah.
As for that specific case, I haven't specifically heard of it, so I would just take their word for it.
Oh, no, I totally can get where you're coming from, but I don't think that's a institutionalized problem where it's a law per se. I think it's more so a personal vendetta in a way.
What's the difference if you are a lawmaker and you're exacting your personal choice through impediment of law change?
So,
I mean, technically, that is their job. That's literally what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to make laws. They're called the House of Representatives because they're supposed to represent certain districts in their state. And then they pass laws that usually favor what the majority of the people want. It doesn't always happen that way, but usually.
If we're going to go based on systemic racism, it has to be institutionalized, which means it has to be written into law, made public. When it comes to that aspect, that's not necessarily made public by law. That's made public by choice and actual discrimination by person.
So I can give you an example in Tennessee.
Okay.
So for instance, in Tennessee, we can say that they are put into law that now tax dollars, the public's tax dollars will be supporting voucher systems.
And that is a good thing. That's not a bad thing. If a school is run like shit, the best thing you could possibly do is send them to a school that's maybe far better than the one in that district. The thing is, giving parents a choice on where they send their kid. That's the whole aspect of it. It's not racist. It's not evil. It's just, if you have a school with a 20% rate of passing versus a school with an 80%, why would you want to go to the school where 20% of people are passing?
Voucher systems for the schools allow parents to choose whatever school they want their child to go to using taxpayer money. And these schools can be private schools. And private schools are not in any way limited from creating systems of segregation. And this is actually how segregated schools was carried out previous to Brown versus Board of Education. So this is a systemic example.
The problem with her statement is that she also doesn't take into account that, first of all, they're not allowed to discriminate on people. The only discrimination that really private schools have is based upon how much money you have to send a person there. Using vouchers as a way to get more people in low income who would historically never be able to afford it into that school is actually a really good way of giving someone an opportunity that they never would have had before.
We also can acknowledge that systemic examples come from not always it being written into law. And I think that is a real straw man argument for the way that a lot of colorblind racism is carried out in the United States. And what happens when we do that is we ignore the fact that most of the people making the laws are not going to put their racism on the books.
Oh, that's true. Obviously not going to put on the books. But when it comes to the Civil Rights Acts of 1964, then you also want to talk about the one in 1968. They did actually give more fair housing equality.
That was the goal.
Yeah, that's true.
But you see, that's the thing. It's like if so that's the difficult part of not changing a culture. You can change the law all day, but as Martin Luther King Jr., as the Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. talks about in his final book, he says, I feel like I integrated my people into a burning house because he understood America to be a
I am going to fact check that. I have never heard that statement. I'm going to fact check that. Let's see. So it's a statement from a conversation where it was not entirely mentioned. Martin Luther King Jr. reportedly expressed deep concern to Harry Belafonte. I hope I said that correct. During their last conversation at, I'm just going to ignore his name from this point on, his home shortly after King's assassination, stating, I've come upon something that disrupts me deeply. We have fought hard and long for integration, as I believe we should have. And I know we will win, but I've come to believe that we're integrating into a burning house. King elaborated to that he feared America was losing its moral vision and that integration was occurring without corresponding commitment to justice and opportunity for the poor and disenfranchised, which perpetuated societal anger and violence. When that guy asked what should be done, King responded, become a fireman. Let's not stand by and let the house burn. This metaphor signified the need for activists to actively combat systemic injustices rather than passively accept conditions of inequality. Okay, so I get it. It's kind of like he said, making laws is one thing. Now getting people in society to accept you as well as to fix issues within society is the next goal. That sounds to me exactly what he said. So it's not a full statement with full context that she said, but statement didn't have the full context at first. Now let's go.
Place of morality.
Well, when it came back to even back in the 1960s, like Lyndon B. Johnson actually proposed many systems in place
But
he actually
after that, people still got lynched.
Well, I can't really like.
And the thing about that part is government can make a law and society people in society don't always accept it. That they passed a law, so people that weren't following and disrespecting that law, now they need to be put in jail. That's the next thing, which is now that it's an official law on the books, you gotta actually implement it onto the general population. So while lynchings did happen, the next thing you have to do is obviously law enforcement and correctly enforce that law.
Say that's a systemic problem. That's definitely a personal heart problem. Those are more people's individual choices against someone else. But when
if
it
the
comes
system
down
that's
to
in place does not incarcerate those people or create any repercussions for those actions, then it is systemic.
Well,
because when you don't allow for there to be repercussions for harmful behaviors of a people, you're literally saying our system is okay with this. So that's what Black Lives Matter is about, right? Saying like, okay, if police are going to act in this way, well, there should at least be fair repercussions across all people that they're doing this to, and they're not carrying out those repercussions for Black people. Why? And so the system is supporting this personal point of view that you're talking about, and that's what makes it also systemic, along with the fact that we know for a fact that the number of Black people incarcerated is greater per capita than white people. We know that Black people are having longer sentences for the same crimes than white people.
That part actually depends on which city it is. There are some cities where felonies have been switched to misdemeanors in order to lead to less arrest. This one is entirely based on which state is actually doing the prosecution. Where states like California are lenient and sometimes, quite literally, just allow people that broke laws to get away with stuff and, actually punish people for doing bad things. That one's more of a state-by-state thing.
Me making that up, like that is actual data.
All right,
so
pause.
systemic is real.
Oh, they kicked
Pause.
him
You've
out.
been voted out by the majority. Please
All
return
right,
to your
Pete.
seat.
Thank you.
Who's next? Oh,
All right, how you doing, Amanda?
oh, it's always the super fast people.
Ryan.
Ryan. Nice
to meet you. Thanks for being here. All right. Well, what I would say is, as far as systematic racism, right? I think most of us would agree that, at the very least, it has occurred in this country.
Okay.
Right. We've had slavery, we've had Jim Crow segregation, all these different things.
Yeah.
I think my argument would be that right now, in modern America, I don't think, at the very least, it's not as prevalent as it has been to where it could stop us from being successful. Okay. I would say that it's not a thing anymore where it needs to be talked about so much and so much attention focused on it. I don't think that currently there.
Yeah, that's true. As Morgan Freeman said, if you want to end racism, stop talking about it. I agree with that point, because if we stop talking about it, eventually no one will, really base society off of that.
There is systematic racism in a way that it's going to be harmful to us, like I said, to stop us. If anything, really, I think institutions such as things with DEI.
What do you think DEI is?
Basically, I think
DEI is enforcing certain lower standards in order for people who meet certain criteria to get into positions of power. So a good example is sometimes DEI will lower standards for a woman to get into certain jobs just because they want more of them in it. Or they'll do it for a specific race, or they'll do it for people with a specific sexuality. It's basically stuff like that, where instead of it's merit, where if you're the best, we hire you, it's you have to meet these criteria and you're in.
that it's in a way it's racism against other races outside of blacks.
Kind of.
And so
Where did you get that concept of it from?
I've researched a lot of things. I looked at different clips from both sides of the argument, things like that. But basically my point is, I think that as far as systematic racism, I think that there's evidence from the other side in that there's different things that are pushing black people up in ways that are not fair and different things like that. Because I think that we should be merit-based. I think that should always be merit-based. And where we're in, when there's jobs and different things like that, race should not be something that's considered. And so I think that,
agreed.
Let's say that there are ways right now where systematic racism is still alive.
Bro, why are you raising up your flag? He's cooking. Goddamn random ass people.
Again, it's not holding us back to a point where we can still be successful. We've seen so many examples, today in modern times where Black Americans can, there's no opportunities that I have that a white person or that a white person has that I don't have. I believe that all
Are
of
you
us
sure about that? Can you actually say that?
I would say that I have every opportunity in this country to be successful, to do what I want to do, and to stand on business that every other race has. Absolutely. And
do you have the
again,
same support?
Yeah, as he said, pretty much the answer is yes, with the exception of certain, with the only real exception being if you know certain people, as well as if you have a certain amount of money, you will have certain opportunities that are harder to come by than if you have absolutely nothing to your name. There are certain opportunities on the economic side of things which still need a little bit of fixing on that end.
Even if I don't have the same support, I can do what I got to do.
Do you have the same support?
I probably have more. I
do you
have
have the
more
same
support than
community
others.
support?
I have excellent community support. Absolutely.
Lucky for you.
Sure. Yeah.
Where did you grow up in a lower income, middle income, high income community?
It was middle income.
Okay.
Yeah. So again, I think that even those who grow up in very needy situations, right, they may not have been dealt a great hand of cards.
But they
can still, I think it comes down to accountability. You can still play your hand and play your cards strategically in a way where you can still be successful, you can still do your thing, and you can wind up on top. And there's nothing stopping us from doing that.
Would you say that low income white people and low income black people have the same ability to excel?
The answer is, in most cases, yes. There obviously are factors such as how much crime your place has, what state you're in. I would say in most cases, yes. If they're like in the same place culturally, generally the same area with generally the same amount of money, they pretty much have the same opportunities through and through. And then obviously things like crime, if they're in an area with a lot of crime versus one without it, there will be a lot of opportunities that just aren't on the table because crime forces a lot of businesses to close down and a lot of bad things to happen to people around that area.
I would say they have the same ability to excel.
Okay, so I'm going to start countering from that point then.
Sure.
So ultimately, we know that our low-income communities are not given the same access to resources on a myriad of levels. They don't even have the same air quality, okay? We know that low-income communities in general are also going to be much more policed than other communities. We know that policing as it exists in the United States came from slave catching. So even the tradition...
Actually, no, policing came from British culture, which eventually just came to us. Like, slave catching was not really a form of policing, unless you count... Oh, I don't remember the name of it, but there was one thing where if a slave ran to the north, people were required to help in bringing that person back to the south, or allowing people from the south to take them back. I forgot what that thing was called. That's probably the only time I could really consider... That's probably what she's trying to refer to, but policing always happened before that. That was just a shitty installment of it. Oh, shoot. Okay. I don't remember who implemented it, but I know it was definitely before Lincoln.
Of policing comes from protecting property, not protecting people. Okay. So let's start there. When we talk about low income, like the working class black people in this nation, we know that they have never been considered, ever, whether they were slaves or not. They just weren't considered. And we also know, as our brother Isaiah pointed out, that there are still people in very powerful positions that hold very personal positions as it relates to racism. And so in that way, they are impediments to someone moving forward. When we talk about DEI, the concept of DEI is not about lowering a standard. It's about what...
Actually, that's exactly what DEI is. Lowering a standard to let people of a certain criteria get a advantage versus somebody else who has to go through more rigorous way of getting to the same outcome.
Widening the options. So we live in a nation that I feel like a lot of y'all are looking at the United States as a long history of something. We have a short history, all right? For 400 years, there was slavery, but...
And once again, she said that 400 years ago bullshit. The United States was not made 400 years ago. It never existed 400 years ago.
People were not even considered whole humans. We were 3/5 human. After the Civil War, during Reconstruction.
Oh yeah, she's talking about, I know exactly what she's talking about, but black people were considered 3/5 of a person. And this was for the House of Representatives, where it made no sense to count black people as 3/5 of a person, but not even give them 3/5 of a person's rights. Where that legitimately made no sense and was only there for the South to increase its population. Because if you don't consider them worth representing, why do you want them to be considered 3/5 of a person? Because that logically makes absolutely no sense. And that's part of the reason why It was just a bullshit law. Either they aren't a part of your population and you get less representation, or they are and you have to give them 60% of the representation that you have yourself. But they wanted to have their cake and eat it too, and that was absolute bullshit on the South's part.
Black people were then subjected to the Black Laws. The Black Laws were specifically for Black people. The Black Laws incarcerated Black people at such an exorbitant rate that they were able to get another slave labor force through the 13th Amendment, because you had Black people that were serving entire life, like months-long, years-long sentences for jaywalking.
Okay.
So,
I smell bullshit. The problem with jaywalking is jaywalking requires there to be cars. You're talking about World War I, the 1920s. She's talking about the 1860s, but jaywalking is a concept that came in the 1920s when people were getting cars. So that part's completely bullshit.
So when we look at these things, we act as if, well, why can't we just get over that? That's 2 generations previous, okay? So if a father in the early 1900s was incarcerated for 2 years, how do you think that would impede their family from being able to grow, right?
Sure.
Now you're affecting the ability for their children to have 2 parents in the home. You also now have a mother who's like incredibly stressed and may have to always be working, so she's not able to parent, etc. We also know that there is a continued effort in this nation to not have Black people know the history of this nation. Like our good sis.
And I call bullshit on that. Literally, this is how U.S. history goes. U.S. was made, we fought Britain, slavery, here's a big part of slavery, World War I, here's World War II, here's MLK, and that's it. That's basically every U.S. history class ever. Like, we do teach slavery. It's like the second thing we teach right after us fighting Britain. It always is.
Here was talking about like we have resilience, but this nation actively works systemically to keep that from us, right? We look in Florida at the laws that they are passing to not
Hey, don't
allow
talk shit about my state. We're doing pretty well.
Education about our past. And we know that if we don't know where we came from, how can we know where we're going?
Sure, okay.
All right, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry.
All good.
That's flags.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next. Oh, it's her again.
Hi.
Hi again.
We cool now?
We good. We good. I think we're on the same. We're kind of looking at the same side of the same coin, and I think we both want the betterment of the Black community, and I think we're maybe coming from it from different ways. And so I do respect your position to what you were saying as well, that there are certain things and powers at play. And I've experienced racism firsthand. A lot of conservatives may try to act like, oh, there's no racism in America. I absolutely believe there is racism.
Oh yeah. The way I like to think about it is racism. There is racism, but it went from something that in the early 2000s was generally less talked about to something that became some people's entire ideology on and worldview, at least recently after, everything passed, which sadly brought society back, because how is it that we were doing better in 2000s on race and racism where nobody even talked about it before?
In America, I believe racist people exist. I just don't think that the systems as they stand today are inherently racist, because I've seen too many Black people overcome. And I just feel like a lot of times what's left out of the dialogue is self-accountability and like self-will. We talked about how we were 3/5 of a person, but now we are 100%, I guess, according to the law or whatever, a person. And I feel.
Yep, that is correct. The 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment. There are also a few others that are so broad that they do apply, but I'm talking about those because they're extremely specific to the Black population.
Like at the end of the day, if you wanted to walk out here right now and decide, you know what, I want to change my career, I want to do that, you can. And that's why so many people and Nigerians come here and Indians come here, and so many people who are not white, who are supposed to be discriminated against because they're not white, they come here and they become doctors and lawyers. Why? Because to your point, there's community. There's a sense of pride about, you know what, I got to go honor my parents back in Nigeria. I'm part Nigerian. I have to go honor my parents. I have to go honor my elders. They're not twerking and shaking booty. They're getting
They are literally twerking and shaking booty in
the
Nigeria.
Nigerians I know ain't doing.
To be honest, no, they're not. Africa has just sadly way too much corruption for a lot of people to truly succeed yet. Once they get rid of the corruption, they'll be a lot better off than they're currently right now.
If they are
We
Turkish, but
literally
they
learned it
doctors
from Africa.
They're doctors twerking and shaking
literally
booty, so
have
maybe
it
they
from
can
Africa.
shake because they got
But
the money to
I
back
think
it up.
that's
But do you see what
an
you're saying? But do
generalization.
you see what I'm saying, though? We have to be honest, Amanda. When
Well,
Indians come here,
so as a fellow daughter of an immigrant,
Okay.
right? So my mother's from Grenada. My mother did come here and was able to work and was able to get green cards
Props
for
to her.
folks. So shout out to my mom. There's a very big difference in growing up somewhere and coming from a place where you are the majority and where your people are running the show than being
Yeah, but the problem is, if you come from a shithole and you go to America, you still came from a shithole.
somewhere where your people have been subjugated the entire time your people have been
but your
here.
mama came here and she wasn't the majority, so how did
No.
she succeed?
She succeeded because she came here with the fortitude of coming from a place.
Her resilience, right?
No, but
And
you're,
she had
you're
her
Yeah.
village.
let me say
And that's the thing. She's denying that her mom actually succeeded and brought herself to a point where she could capitalize on the even higher portions of American freedoms that someone with her amount of money actually does have.
what I'm saying.
Okay, I'll let you unpack.
If we don't acknowledge divide and conquer in the United States, we are having a pointless conversation.
I agree.
We have to acknowledge that there is a concerted effort at divide and conquer in the United States. We're literally watching it happen right now with an effort to divide and conquer and have black people fighting immigrants and have black people saying that immigrants don't matter.
And fighting white people.
White people is not the point. The concept of white people is about people who are upholding a supremacy of
Bro, why the hell are you talking about a race like it's a concept? Like they didn't choose to be born white. They just were. That's not really something they had control over. Just like you don't have control over being black.
whiteness versus people who understand that there should be an egalitarianism. There should
I
be an
believe that
equality.
we are becoming the new white supremacists.
We
'cause
are.
We've been
We
putting them on
are.
a pedestal.
We are.
Oh,
We feel like we
God.
can't.
Oh, she wants to. Yep, she's agreeing. She wants to. I know exactly what she wants. Yep.
We
Do
are.
anything,
No, it's not that
we
we're
ain't
putting
been
them.
nothing,
It's not
won't
that
be
we're putting them
nothing.
on a pedestal. It's that we are joining them and instead weaponizing our blackness against our people. When
How
we
are we
do what
joining
you're
them?
saying, we are saying, I am better because I figured it out, and so you're the problem because you didn't figure
But
it
Amanda,
out.
what about if I believe that
Oh
the
my
American
God.
dream is, I have a right to that as well?
She's
Is that
being
me joining
unreasonable
white
again.
people? Or is that me saying, you know what, I
What's
want
the
a life for
American
my
dream?
The American dream for me, because it may look different from other people. Some people it's a boss chick. For me, I want my kids to grow up in a wonderful neighborhood. I
Yep.
want them to go to college. I want
Yep.
to have a 401k. I want to do this. I want to do that. So I feel like a lot of times in the black community, we associate anything that's right or that's just or that's striving forward with whiteness. So when you say that we're
no,
working
it's not
with
that it's
them,
whiteness, it's
Oh, God.
capitalism. And I think that's what we have
The good part about America is it's human rights mixed with capitalism.
to understand the difference of. The concept of capitalism always is grounded in exploitation.
but Amanda,
So
we're sitting here benefiting from capitalism, and you know that because you would want
I
to move to a
understand that we are
communist
benefiting. I understand that we are benefiting from capitalism, but I also understand that we would have other people and a majority of people benefit if we were not solely capitalist. That is what it means to be a black radical. It's to understand that I can
God.
benefit as well as others.
So, Amanda, what is your solution then? Because we know that capitalism benefits us, and people are
My
coming here every
solution
day.
is what I continue to say. We need to have
Okay.
coalition building across cultural differences, across ethnicities, across classes.
and that includes
We need
collaborating
to-
with white people.
I've never said it didn't.
But I feel
this
like a lot of
obsession,
times-
this obsession with white people fails to acknowledge the fact that there are people who benefit
Oh,
from
God.
white supremacy.
But we
who
live
do
in
not-
America,
Let me finish
man.
my
Oh, my
point.
God.
There are people who benefit from white supremacy that do not identify themselves as white. They don't
Oh my God. Let me guess. She's going to talk about Will Smith for pretty soon.
consider that to be the most important element of their identity because they understand that at the end of the day, we need to see each other as humans that all deserve a right to exist.
Exactly.
We
I
all
agree.
deserve a right to exist, and I shouldn't have to earn my right to exist. And
You do,
that
but-
is what
but What makes
capitalism
you think
does.
that you have to earn it? That's what I'm
That
saying.
is
Like,
what
I
this
don't feel
nation
that way.
is. You do have to
don't.
earn it.
You don't have to earn
Yes,
it.
you do.
We are
That
in
is why we are
America, Amanda.
criminalizing the poor. We are criminalizing the poor
my
on a regular
God.
basis.
How-
The thing about poor community is there's a correlation between being poor and as well as crime. The thing is, get rid of the criminals so the people that want to better themselves in society have an opportunity without it being destroyed by other people's selfishness or even lack of humanity in exchange for it.
If How so? Because we're not even allowing for a wage to happen to allow people to get out of poverty. We are seeing inflation.
We both have people in our family that have done it, so we can't.
No, we have not had people that are done it. My mother came to America with an entire nursing degree. I can't say, oh, well, my mother did it. Why can't you? Because my mother
was pregnant at 19 from the south side of Chicago with no degree and still made
good
something
for
of
your
herself.
mom. But this is the thing.
So we can't do it.
It's not. The question isn't whether or not some people can do it.
God.
The question and the reality is that it is not available to everyone in an equal way.
And that's unfortunate, man. But you know we live in a broken society. I went to Nigeria and they're having the same problems, and there's a bunch of black people that are running Nigeria.
It's a broken society.
But it's the same thing in Nigeria.
But Nigeria is a broken society, whereas Burkina Faso is not. Burkina.
Oh my God, that was okay. She went from she got very unreasonable at lots of points here. Holy shit. Okay, yeah, this is almost the first part.
That's time.
My final claim is.
Okay, good. So I finished this part. Now, hopefully, I could finish the next part.